Hi, I'm Francois from Production Music Live, today with Producer Notes, and we're taking a look at the style of ARTBAT and Armin Van Buuren Take Off. We have a fully arranged track here, only using Ableton Live stock effects and instruments, plus Serum or Serum 2, we have two versions. And we are modeling it after this track using different sounds as sources, different chords, melodies and harmonies to sort of create our own version of this. There's a full playback at the end of this video. Let's take a quick overview of what's going on here. We have a drums group sounding like this. And then we have a bass group that does this during the drop. And this is what it does during the break. Then we have this instruments group below here that has these pitchy synths, and we are playing a bunch of stabs along in the drop part. During build-ups or break parts, we are playing a bunch of synths and pads and stuff. So as you can see here, we have two parts of this track. We have like the drop parts and then we have the break parts. That's basically the arrangement, and they alternate between another. And then you have an intro before all of that and an outro after all of that. And that's basically an arrangement that lasts 5.5 minutes here. And below we also have effects and impacts and risers. Okay, so we are at 127 BPM here, and let's go through some of these key elements here one by one. This is our kick sound. That's what it sounds in solo. Massive kick sound. By the way, all of this is part of the Mesmerize Melodic Techno Sound Pack. This is the project file available for Serum 1 and 2. And also we have Serum presets and a full-sized sample pack library in here as well. So just so you know, if you want to check this out, feel free to check out the link in the description below. And we are combining this with the occasional snare in the drop part here. So we have the kick and then we have a snare. And this is kind of the call and response pattern that later also plays with the synthesizer. So you have the pitch synth in this part, and then you have like the stabby synth in the second part here. So if I'm playing this together, we just have our drum element, the kick and the snare, and then we are playing these plugs. Then you see and so this is ongoing call and response pattern here, and it's already picking up with the snare as well. So what else do we have in the drums group? I'm quickly soloing those two again. And we have this ride element that's super prominent here as well. Let's listen in. So long ride, and it does play 8th notes. If we are setting this to 8th notes, you can see that. Rolling off a lot of low end here. And also sidechaining it with this docking shaper and LFO utility device. And then we have a closed hi-hat. It just supports us on the kick. So here. Making sure our kick cuts through nicely in these parts. So together with the snare. And then later in what we call the bridge part here, we are also playing a clap type position with this element here. Let's quickly play it solo. It's like this layered thing. All types of tambourine on top, layered as well. And we have a tom. Or a tom type percussion element actually. So if we listen to this in solo, There's also a long reverb tail. Gets sent into our reverb here, our 7 seconds decay time reverb. So we have a very straightforward drum setup here, clean ride, clean snare sound and clean kick, not too complicated. And also in the sub part, in the bass now, we are playing 16th notes here with this bass. And it's also pretty straightforward. If we listen to it in solo. What are we playing here? We are playing the ICANN has kick wavetable in oscillator A, and that's about it. Then we are shortening the envelope to like almost 200 milliseconds and a release time of 15 milliseconds, and then it also goes through this filter here with a 24 decibels per octave low pass, controlled by envelope number 2 with 193 and also 15. And then a bit of compression on top and dimension expander is mixed in, and also we are setting it to unison 4 voices and mixing that in slightly as well. So that's our bass setup here, and then we are trimming it a bit, -8 decibels, and then also we are tweaking the EQ to the reference track. So this is kind of modeled after the reference track, that's why it looks like this. You don't necessarily have to do it like this, also depends on the context of your song, and here it's getting sidechained. So together with the kick. And this ride. Let's take a quick look at the reese bass in the break part, which is interesting. Simple reese. So we have saw wave here and saw rounded to square, and we have 10 voices here and 8 voices here. So this one is really wide. And the second EQ here, you can see we are rolling off low-end information on the side, focusing more on the mono or mid part of that sound. Very simple setup here, going through 18 decibels per octave filter as well. So combined with a sub drop, just an impact type sample here. And that's being used a lot together with other impacts down here as well. You can see this, this one. So just for the Atmo, and then the last one in the bass group is this mid bass part that plays in the beginning. Also playing 16th notes, but one long note. So what's going on? If you're taking a look at the sound, you will see the LFO is playing 16th notes here. The rate is 16ths. And it's controlling the levels and it's controlling the filter. And we are quite wide because we are playing 8 voices here and they're detuned. Bit of EQ cutting off the lows here. That's why we don't have it down here. So this is the bass group. And now let's go to the key elements here in the draw part in the instruments group, which is basically this stab. And it sounds super interesting if we're playing it without this upper one here. Let's play the entire drop quickly. So it's very metallic somehow in this way. And now the juice, or like the key part of this track, is coming in by playing this pitched synth on top of all of this. And let's play it solo quickly. It does this. So we have these notes here, this plug sound, and it starts at G sharp here, and then it starts at C. It just takes a different starting point, but then it gets pitched up with the pitch bend with the same shape. So here we're starting at a different level somehow, and you can see the pitch bend is moving up over time. And if we take a look at the sound itself, we have saw waves here through a 20 decibels per octave filter with short decay time and a bit longer release time here. And here you can see the pitch bend moving up. And let's take a look at the effects group quickly. We have a bit of dimension expansion and we have a bit of detuning going on here, and we're sending it all through a reverb with 18% size width all the way up, mixed to 35. And matrix, the mod wheel, which is moving with this LFO here, controls the filter frequency. Like slightly. And other than that, we are controlling the fine tuning of both oscillators and the main tuning a bit with the LFOs, but not as much from the variations. So it's just a little bit unstable. So that's super interesting to see that together with these more metallic stabs down there. And with all the other stabs now in stab 1, 2, lead, FM, and so on, we basically need something metallic, and every time we need a lot sort of different character. So we have this nice call and response pattern where here something's happening, then something else is happening in this bar, and then again something else from that is happening down here. So don't worry too much about the exact sound designs. It's more about like making it sound different and kind of cool. And this one here is layered from 2 elements. So this pitchy one, super pitchy. If we go to the matrix, we can see LFO1 controls the main tuning here. It falls down. That creates this pitch effect. You can also exaggerate that a bit further. But this is what we need. And then it also goes into a dimension expander. And then we're throwing some reverb on top with this drop synth group here, where we're cleaning up with this EQ. And then we're sending it through these reverbs here, decay 5.41 and 331, and rolling off some top and also mixing in the dry signal here as well. So this is kind of like parallel effect. The second source sound here is this one. So these are 2 saw waves as well, very plucky, very short envelope setup here on the filter, also on envelope 1, and now we have 10 voices on each of these sounds. And this one, oscillator B, is playing an octave higher than oscillator A. And you can also hear this auto pan going on. So there you go. This is the setup for these 2 stab sounds, and together. And you can also see we are playing 2 notes here in between, or actually 3 notes in between the pattern that is playing the pitched one. Makes it more interesting, and together with the kick, it kind of sounds super clacky. Bass. It's super cool. Simple setup, but just drives. Okay, and then the next sound is this stab sound that's more dirty. So again, setting this to 16th notes, so you can quickly see what's going on. These are 232 notes here. And well, this one is heavily layered as well. Maybe a bit too much for this session here, but basically it's about making it sound dirty. So this is one sound. The next one is some gritty wavetables here. And then the next one is... This is sine waves sent through unison, detuned and distorted a little. And then below that we have this sound. That one has a longer release time. The other ones are shorter, and this one has a bit more of a tail in that sense with 16 voices of a saw wave. Combined with the first one like this, more short, all of them combined. And that's just a little bit of mixing and matching, you know, one is more centered and then you have more wider sounds and then you put it together like that and see if it works with the track. And then we can go on to the next element here, which is the lead FM type synth. And you can see it goes through a flanger together with the kick quickly. So that's what we have here. What's going on in the sound in Serum? We are using ICANN as kick and FM as wavetables. And let's quickly take a look at the matrix. We are mixing in the effects reverb wet with the mod wheel and also distorted wet with the mod wheel. So these two effects are being mixed in with the mod wheel here. So it is washed out in the beginning of the sound when it's opened up, and then it gets cleaner and less distorted. And then on top of that, we have this flanger effect, like messing around. It's also an interesting sound here. Let's go on. It's layered with plug FM. So this one. Yeah, this is a very useful sound as well. We are using this sine wave here to modulate on top of that sine wave with this PD from B modulation. And if we turn this one off, there's nothing going on. So this is frequency modulation on top of this one, or some type of modulation on top. And the MIDI is just going an octave up. Ba-dum, ba-dum. So, and that sits below this sound. And below that, we have this lead saw sound. Yeah, that's just a stabby lead saw. Lots of voices stacked next to one another. 16 of them, saw waves here. And then we clean up the low end, emphasize a bit on the high end, send it through a reverb. So now the entire instruments group together here. We haven't looked at this one. Let's take a look at this sound here. That's the last one at the end of the pattern before we repeat everything. And this is the setup in Serum. We have ICANN has kick and basic shapes also modulating on top of it here. Because otherwise... Take a look at the matrix. LFO1 controls the coarse pitch of oscillator A, and envelope 2 controls the filter frequency. So that one here, and this one controls the coarse pitch, so it's a bit more pitchy. We go to the matrix and we exaggerate the amount. It's always interesting to play around with this stuff to figure out what else this could sound like. Setting it back to the initial state. Okay, and then we are cleaning up some resonant frequencies here if I'm turning this off. We didn't need that. So this is basically our entire setup here. And then we also have this more simple synth setup here in our break part. This is a bit more standard stuff. Quickly going through this, we're in A flat minor. Sort of heartbeat type sound. And then it's getting combined with these growls. Play this one. That's the saw waves here. And they get layered with this more growly stuff. And we mix these together to get growl 1 and then growl 2. It's more like the war horn type sound. That's a nice sound. Yeah, that one is great. And clean. So combine those two. And then we have the pads below all of this where we are just playing very clean in the background, not too much going on here. A bit of a saw wave run through, a low pass filter, and slow attack times on the sound overall, slow release times. These are really chill in the background and layered with 11 voices of a saw wave, also run through a filter, and also very laid back sound here. Cut low frequencies. And on top here we have this plug. So this one is emphasizing on the first notes here of the heartbeat type plug. And that's 2 sounds layered. And this one. And now you could argue, hey, this in Serum 2, you can actually put this into one sound because you have 3 oscillators, or you could argue even more than that, available. This is still because we've built this with Serum 1 and 2, so you can use both versions here. That's why it's layered into 2 parts, but it's technically also possible to do that in Serum 2 completely. And below all of this, we have this reese bass following along with the pads. Okay, and now we're stacking a bit more information on top here. More saw waves on top with a bit of a square wave in there, octaves higher for more brilliance. Not going too much into detail on that sound. And then we have this. Like in the offbeat position, putting the bass back on here. And then on top of that, we have these longer synths playing, like sounding almost like an electronic guitar. And that one then gets this distorted top element. So if we listen to it all combined. And that's interesting because those 2 notes overlap, and if we go into Serum 2 to look at the sound, we can see it's set to mono, legato, and portamento up, and it's just one voice of a saw wave sent through a filter again. And with the portamento, you can now decide how quickly this pitch moves around. So okay, zooming out a bit, these are the most important elements of this sound. We'll take a look at the smaller ones in the playback at the end of this video and quickly scroll through them as well. The key elements of this sound are like very clean drum setup here, not overdoing it too much. Clean kick, clean snare, and clean ride element. That's almost everything you need here to get this moving. And then a very clean 16th notes bass. And then call and response patterns here need to be set up on point. This is what this track is all about at the end of the day. And then everything else is simpler setups. This is more dreamy, paddy, some plugs in there, nothing too complicated. So you need the clean sounds in the surrounding here in the drums and bass, and then you can put in the dirty sounds here in the plug and stab parts and the call and response parts. And then you build up the tension here in the first part, and then you release it with the snares when the dirty stabs are coming in. So that's the release, and then again building up tension. So this is kind of your arrangement technique in here as well. And taking a look at the overall arrangement, we have basically these two drop parts here and there. And in between, we have these break parts that are sort of releasing a little bit of the intensity, building up the dreamy vibes, and then bringing you back into the drop. By the way, which gets introduced by an early clap here from the effects group, which sounds like this. And that sits right in front of the kick. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to check out the links in the description to this Mesmerize Melodic Techno Pack, including this project file, and also feel free to take a look at the Melodic Techno bundle, where this one is part of as well. You can also check out our harmony course for music theory for electronic music, and also feel free to check out the everything bundle, which is the best deal in our store, especially at this time of the year. I hope to see you soon. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see next, and now let's have a full playthrough through this track.